My next guest has been an award-winning performer for over 30 years. Audiences know her from countless television shows and movies, and she's the co-founder of the very popular Los Angeles Women's Theater Festival. I could go on, but I'd rather you hear it from her. So let's welcome Adilah Barnes. Adilah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hooks. It's my pleasure to be here today.
Okay, that's the last time you're going to call me Mr. Hooks, right? We know.
Well, I'm doing it respectfully.
I know, and I understand,
So
but
I'll call you now Robert on the air.
That's right.
Okay.
Hattie Mae calls me Bobby, but you can't do that.
Okay. I'll stay with the Robert.
Let's talk. It's so nice to have you sitting across the table. There's so much to talk about, but I want you to do most of the talking. First, tell me about this incredible festival, the Los Angeles Women's Theater Festival.
Okay.
How the heck did you start something like that?
Well, it really was unbelievable. It was 15 years ago, and I happened to be at a conference that was held in Pasadena, and it was put on by the California Arts Council. It was a touring roster conference, and I met a woman there by the name of Miriam Reed. And what we discovered was that we had a kinship in terms of the work that we do. I portray historical African American women, and she portrays historical Anglo women. And so that was the hook, that was the connection. So by the time that whole weekend was over, they had everyone come together in this big room for a powwow. They asked for announcements, and Miriam said, Adilah, what if I go up and find out if there are other solo artists here? And if there's a way, collectively, we can support each other. And I said, I think it's a great idea. So she went up, made the announcement, and all these women bombarded us at the end. We had actors, dancers, storytellers, performance artists, performance poets, singers, musicians. And we said, we're on to something. So two of the women said, well, we have a theater at the Burbank Little Theater. We can have our first meeting there. And by the end of that first meeting, the Los Angeles Women's Theater Festival was born, a festival for solo artists.
Well, we have mutual friends all over the place, but I was talking to one of them today, as a matter of fact, and she says, well, you know about the theater festival. They're doing all, Hattie Winston is who I'm talking.
She's one of our honorary chairpersons, she and Danny Glover.
Right.
That's right.
Right, exactly. So now now tell me what the festival is, what are you guys presenting at this point? Okay.
We just celebrated our 15th anniversary. That was at the El Portal Theater in North Hollywood.
On Lancashire.
On Lancashire, and now we're gearing up for other performances. In fact, we have one that's coming up on June 1st, and that's going to be at the Lucy Florence Cultural Center. Two of our performers will be there, and the program is called Massage, Memories, and Men. And so we'll have Juliet Jeffers, we'll have Sally Randa, so we hope people will come out, and that will be at 4 p.m.
Now that venue is amazing. Talk a little bit about where...
It's like a museum. Yes. It's right in the heart of Leimert Park, and it's one of the most beautiful venues I've ever walked in. It really feels like you're walking in a museum. Aesthetically, you have all this beautiful artwork, and you have all these knickknacks and rooms that are like parlors. It's just unbelievable.
Now the twins run that, right?
The twins run that.
Funny story.
And his brother.
Right, funny story, real quick. Glenn Turman is doing a one-man show, and I had never been to this place, and I go there, and I'm early, because I'm always early, and I'm getting some coffee, and I see this guy, and he comes over, and I say hello, he shakes my hand and all, and he goes over here, and I get my coffee, and all of a sudden I see this guy coming down the stairs, and I said, wait a minute, that's not possible. This guy just walked over this way, and he's coming. And the coffee person that was giving me coffee laughed and said they're twins.
That's right. And they're identical.
They're identical twins, and they dress alike. And
It's so hard to tell one from the other. It's amazing.
It is. Talk to us, Adilah, about is it a writer's workshop you have in the...
We also, my writer's retreat.
Well, you have so much. I want to talk about all of it.
Well, what I want to do is mention the other thing that's happening at the Lucy Florence, and that does have to do with our writer's workshop. We have something called Wisdom Wednesdays, and it's a series of workshops that we have. So we have one that's coming up on June 11th. It'll run for 12 weeks. It's called Spilling the Beans. And it's for solo artists who want to get those stories down on paper and create solo shows. And so far, the festival has produced over 400 solo artists from around the world. And so those who take the workshop Sometimes we actually take those pieces and put those on the main stage, and when we do, we call that hot off the press. And so we have Rose Weaver. She's going to be teaching that workshop. And again, it starts on June 11th at the Lucy Florence.
At the Lucy Florence. Now, just back briefly to the Writers' Workshop in Atlanta. Now, why Atlanta? And tell me about
the most unbelievable story.
There.
It's, well, let me just put it this way, because it's such a bizarre story. Once a year, I have an astrology reading that takes place around the time of my birthday. And so I happened to get an annual reading. This was in '05. And my astrologer said, as he looked at my chart, he said, oh, he said, Atlanta looks like a city that you need to live in, because there's a way they can look at cities around the world. And I said, that's interesting. I've performed there. I've been there for the National Black Arts Festival. I've been there many times, but I never thought about living there. So shortly thereafter, my feng shui woman comes. I know people are going to think this woman is an airy-fairy type. But my feng shui woman comes to my home, and we're talking about positioning things in the home, and she's also an astrologer. And she sits down and she goes, oh, you need to be living in Atlanta. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, the astrologer just said Atlanta. Then my niece calls me up and says, Auntie, I want to move to Atlanta. I don't have anybody to help me drive.
So now your niece is in on this as well?
My niece is in on this too. She calls me up and she says, Auntie, I want to move to Atlanta. I don't have anybody to help me drive. And I'm like, okay, now it's the astrologer, the feng shui woman, and my niece. So I helped her drive, and I said, okay, I'll help you, and but we must have someone who can do long-distance driving, because I can't. And so we made it in 40 hours. I invited my friend, Brandy Ami, to go with us. In 48 hours, we were in Atlanta. Nice. So I began to look at property, and from there I found the most beautiful property, 1.8 acres of land, deer, rabbits, squirrels, blue jays, cardinals.
My.
And so now I've begun, because it's too beautiful to just keep for yourself. So I turned it into a writer's retreat for women. It's called the Writer's Well. And in fact, in July, I have a woman coming. She's a professor at New York University. She'll be there for a whole month. And she's writing a book, nonfiction, about African-American women, visual artists in the 17th and 18th centuries. Wow. So, and I think even 19th century.
How do you fund it? How do you fund it?
Well, actually, it'll be paid for in terms of the whole concept of the Writer's Well by those who are guests.
Oh, okay.
Because it's not a nonprofit.
Oh.
So that means that really, at this point in time, and it may become a nonprofit, but at this point, it's really going to have to survive by those who come and support it, who come to write. Or if I use it for other things as well, weddings and what have you. So it lends itself to a number of different
But what a great concept.
Yeah,
what a great
writers can come, they've got peace and quiet, they can create, and they're away from the cities, wherever they may be coming from. So I'm really thrilled about this.
So this is outside of Atlanta?
It's about 30 minutes south of the airport in Sharpsburg, the Writer's Well.
That's great. That's wonderful. Yeah. Let's back up for a second and talk about your acting career and talk about that somewhat, because I know you act, you teach, you do all that stuff, and I think it's great. But when did the acting thing, was that the very first thing that you started doing?
Well, actually, I began as a writer, and I wrote short stories. I was in junior high school, and by the time I was 16, I began to act. I was in Project Upward Bound, and I know many of your viewers know of Upward Bound programs. And I began with the play The Ugly Duckling by Milne. I played the queen, and that was when the bug bit, and I've been acting ever since. So from stage, I then went on to other forms of acting, television, film, and voiceover, commercials, all of it.
So now what brought you out to Hollywood, to Los Angeles?
I came here, I guess it's been now about 19 years ago. I was an instructor with the American Conservatory Theater, ACT in San Francisco. I was also in the company. And we had a production of Joe Turner's Come and Gone. It was led by Roscoe Lee Brown. And we brought the show to the Los Angeles Theater Center. And it was just miraculous. It was unbelievable, very magical production.
A brilliant play.
Yes, it is. So we had that to begin with, and we had Roscoe, who had
the most brilliant.
Ask for more.
No.
And Anna Devere Smith was in the cast. It was really unbelievable. So we had had a very successful run at ACT. We had surpassed box office records for any show at ACT. And we did the same at LATC, and I was so proud because it's an African-American production, and these are not African-American theaters. And in that 3 months that we ran here, it was just unbelievable. I got 3 film roles. We had casting directors that were coming to see us. All these celebrities were coming out, subscribers, the houses were packed. We extended, and I said, you know, maybe the writing's on the wall. Maybe it's time now to leave the Bay Area, where I had been for 17 years, and was a big fish in a little pond, and to really kind of spread out and come to Los Angeles.
Is that how you know Danny?
Danny I know from the Bay Area. We were both Bay Area actors. I knew Danny before he was a household name. Right. And to this day, Danny and I are still connected. As I mentioned, he's one of our honorary chairs for the festival. And just an incredible human being. Whenever I pick up the phone, and I call the cell number, whenever I pick up the phone, Danny answers. And whatever I ask of Danny, he always obliges if he can.
Well,
so
look,
he
if you
truly is a friend.
Right, if you have Danny's cell number, he is going to do whatever you ask him to do. You know that.
And he picks it up, he goes, yeah, Adela, what is it? Because he can see the name. Yes.
Talk about some of your acting roles in television.
Okay, in television, probably what audiences will know me most for is 5 seasons on Roseanne as Anne Marie. And that began as just strictly a 1-episode guest starring role in another one of those stories where I was touring with the African American Drama Company, a 1-woman show, historical figures for them. And it used to be that when I was on the road, if I had a show at the beginning and at the end of the week, if the one at the end of the week was near where I was at the beginning of the week, I would just stay out on the road, like on the East Coast. Well, this particular week, for some reason, I didn't understand it then, but I said, you know, Phil Walker's the founder of the African American Drama Company in San Francisco. I said, Phil, I want to go back home. So he said, okay. So I go home, and I get this phone call from my agent saying, you have an audition for the show Roseanne. So I'm thinking, aha, that's why I wanted to come home. Well, the odd thing is, the audition was on the day that I was to leave back out. So we scheduled it for that morning, and they said, you know, we want you to see the producers. I said, well, you better get them together quick. I got a plane to catch. That's the first and only time in my life that I saw writers and a director and producers literally running together to meet with talent. And I met with them, and they said, okay, we know you have to catch a plane. We'll talk to you later. And the show aired. They called back later and said, we just viewed it, want to let you know we loved your work. And I'm thinking, never had a call from a writer who originated a role that I did. This may be a good sign. And from there, they added my husband, Jim Pickens, who of course now is on Grey's Anatomy. And they gave us a son, so we became a family, and I was on for 5 seasons. Aaron Brockovich, another project I'm very proud of in terms of film. Iron-Jawed Angels.
Julia Roberts' film.
Julia Roberts.
That wonderful character.
Yes, and a true character, a real person.
Yes.
I loved working on Iron-Jawed Angels because I got to play another historical figure.
Ida B.
Ida B. Wells. And so I've just been blessed to be in projects that have merit and that I'm proud of. And there's some things I've passed on because they just really didn't interest me, and they really didn't hit the mark in terms of what I like to be known for.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. People say to me, "Well, I haven't seen you. I haven't seen you on television. I haven't seen you in film." There's nothing for me to do. They offer me.
I hear you.
But it is so silly and so
I
ridiculous.
hear you. Why would you want to do it
When you don't have to do it.
That's right.
The sad part is, we have friends, and I'm sure you do too, that do it, and
Yes.
because they have to do it.
Because they feel like either they want to work or they need the money.
They need the money.
But I think Sidney Poitier said it recently on Larry King Best, who I've met in my book that's coming out later this year. I recount the 4 times that I've been in this company. That's a whole other story.
Incredible man.
Incredible man. But he talked about, Larry King said, well, why have you retired from acting? And he said, I've retired because why would I want to do roles now that are below the kind of roles that I did for the directors I worked for at my age?
I saw that show, that
Yes.
King show, and Sidney, well, he's always brilliant.
Yes, he
But,
is.
I mean, you know, at 81,
Amazing
the
man.
He's the most healthy specimen I've ever seen.
I tell you, he's
a dear
unbelievable.
friend. We spend time together.
Yes.
But yeah, he was wonderful on that show.
Yes.
Let's talk about Okay, you only named a couple of shows. I know you've done many.
Quite a number. Cold Case recently.
Right. Love that show.
Yeah, good show.
What about the one-woman show? Talk about the one-woman show.
My one-woman show, I Am That I Am, Woman Black, and that show now, it's so close to my heart. I perform 7 historical women. I start with Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Mary McLeod Bethune, Zora Neale Hurston, Lorraine Hansberry, Angela Davis, and Maya Angelou. The show has now been to almost 40 states. My goal is all 50, so I'm trying to hang before I got my cane out there. And it's
You'll just use it if it comes.
if I have to, for the characters. And it's been to 3 continents, of course, the United States and the Caribbean, also Africa, as well as to Europe. So I'm really proud of the fact that these women are known internationally in the places that I've taken the show that maybe had never heard of them before.
Yeah. Well, what a great thing to be able to do, to be able to just pack up, travel around, and play these incredible historic characters in American history.
Very empowering.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about, in the little time we have left, talk a little bit about this present, the possibility of a black president in the White House. Talk a little bit about that. What does it do to you?
It makes me feel very proud. Many of us did not feel that in our lifetime we'd even have a serious contender. And of course we've had other African Americans who have run for president, but not seriously.
And not this far into.
And not this far in. And when Iowa happened, I think that's when everybody kind of sat up straight and said, there's a possibility that this really could go much further than anybody ever expected. So I'm thrilled about it, and we don't know how it's going to turn out, but it certainly looks like it's kind of tilting in his direction at this point in time. I do believe that either of the candidates would certainly honor us well in terms of the Democratic Party.
I agree with that.
We don't need another 4 years of Bushism.
Ain't gonna happen.
So I pray it doesn't, and I don't think it will happen either. So I'm just thrilled, and one person I think said it best when she said, you know, I have this vision of seeing these 2 little black girls playing on the grounds of the White House. And I said, wow.
Chasing squirrels on the right, yeah.
All of the birds and what have you. And I thought, geez, what an image. And so America, I think, is beginning now to live up to its name more fully than ever.
Martin is looking down, and you know he is.
And he's saying, well done.
Well done. Well done. Now, well, that was supposed to be my last question to you, but the Barack Obama thing kind of took me aback. I wanted you to give us a recap of the performances that are coming up before you leave us.
Okay. What's coming up is on June 1st. We're going to be, meaning the Los Angeles Women's Theater Festival, will be at the Lucy Florence Performance Cultural Center, and that will be at 4 p.m. Florence LaRue, vocalist, will be our host that day. Juliet Jeffers and Sally Randa will be performing. And on June 11th, we will start teaching our solo writing class called Spilling the Beans, taught by Rose Weaver. And so those are the 2 upcoming things for the festival. For me, upcoming is my book, On My Own Terms, One Actor's Journey, and that should be out hopefully this summer. I keep going back making last-minute changes, but I think I'm...
What happens when you write books, yeah.
At some point, you got to say, let me just put this baby to bed, and I think I'm almost there. So I'm very excited about that, and looking forward to sharing my experience as an actor starting at 16.
Right. Well, good luck with the book. Thank you. Good luck with all of the wonderful things that you're doing.
So much.
I mean, it touches my heart because it's what I'm all about as well. And I love seeing actors, writers, or whatever that choose to open up their experiences to others and create concepts and venues for others, which is what you've done.
And you certainly have done as well, so I tip my hat to you.
Thank you very much. Adilah Barnes.
Thank you.
Come back, will you?
Okay, I will.
Right on.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, dear.